Good day, everyone, and welcome to a reading from the Audible Local Ledger here in beautiful, cloudy today, though, Mashpee, Massachusetts. This is Doug Fagan, your volunteer reader, coming to you today from the studios of the Audible Local Ledger, as I said, here in Mashpee, on this cloudy and humid day. It's going to be pretty warm today, folks, so I'm going to tell you about the weather here in just a moment, but might be wise for you if you don't have to go out, stay inside in that air conditioning if you have it, or take a dip in a pool or a pond near you. Anyhow, let's take a look at the weather. Fortunately, even though we are experiencing some very hot and humid temperatures, we're not in near as bad a shape as those poor folks down in southeastern Texas, where Hurricane Beryl took quite a toll on those folks yesterday. Anyhow, looking at the Cape and South Shore weather, here it is for today and throughout the week. Today, we're going to have a high of 81 degrees. Going to be some sun, then some clouds, and possibly a reappearance of the sun, but it's going to be cloudy and humid. Tonight's overnight low is only going to be 73 degrees. It's going to be a bit breezy early, then going to have some clouds, and the humidity, unfortunately, is going to stay. It's going to stay through tomorrow as well, where we do have the sun reappearing, and it's going to be a couple degrees higher at 83 degrees as a high for Wednesday. Overnight low of only 72 degrees. It's going to be humid, as we said, and a thunderstorm may be around in the afternoon. Thursday, 83 degrees again with an overnight low of 73. Breezy, mostly sunny, but a thunderstorm that may appear again in the afternoon. Friday jumps up to 84 degrees. So you can see from today through Friday, even Saturday, it's going to be in the 80s. High Friday of 84 degrees, mostly cloudy and breezy, and very humid on Friday. Saturday, 80 degrees, overnight low of 70. You get low clouds, which may break a bit later in the day. Going to be humid with the possibility of a shower. So you've got possible thunderstorms on Wednesday and Thursday, breaking sun on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, but temperatures in the 80s and basically humid all week long. Now, taking a look at some temperatures around the Cape, it's going to be, as it always is, very similar. Across the canal on the west side, at Plymouth is 88 degrees, Buzzards Bay 82, Wareham 85. These are projected highs for today. Sandwich and Falmouth will have highs of 81 today, as well as Barnstable. Mashpee is 81, Hyannis 81, Dennis 83. Brewster will have a high of 85 today. Out at the elbow of the Cape at Chatham, you're going to have a high of 81. Moving north, temperatures get even warmer, surprisingly. Brewster's at 85, Eastham 84, Truro 83, and even out at P-Town, Race Point in Provincetown, 82 degrees as a high today. Now, if you're thinking about swimming, which is not a bad idea on a day like today, the water temperature in Cape Cod Bay, which of course is always colder, is only 65 degrees, but wave heights are minimal at 1 to 2 feet, wind direction south at 7 to 14 knots. Well, you want to swim in Nantucket Sound? Water temperatures at 71 today. Again, minimal wave heights 1 to 3 feet, wind direction south 7 to 14 knots. All right, let's get on the ferry and go out to the islands, where at Oak Bluffs we find a high today of 80 degrees on Martha's Vineyard, and at Edgartown you're going to have a high of 79, broken sunshine and humidity just like on the Cape. Swinging out to Nantucket at Secaucet Village, or at Secaucet rather, it is 74 as a high. Nantucket Village, 79. Same conditions, partly cloudy and sunny with a possible shower later. Well, friends, there you have it, a basic overall look at the weather, not only for today, but through Saturday. And again, a general statement, temperatures in the 80s, broken sunshine on today, Wednesday, and Thursday, and Friday. Possible thunderstorms on Wednesday and Thursday, but humid throughout the week. All right, let's move on, friends. We're going to take a look at page 1 of today's July the 9th Cape Cod Times. And again, it just seems that summer is moving by way too quickly. Before we do that, hope you had all a very nice 4th of July with friends and family, and it was safe and fun for all of you. This first article on page 1 talks about the Greek festival, celebrating faith, family, and good food. There are multiple pictures here of the Orthodox Church in Hyannis, the Greek Orthodox Church, people making cookies, enjoying fellowship, and making other odd bits of food. So let's take a look at this article. And again, it's entitled Greek Festival, Celebrates Faith, Family, and Good Food. It's by Heather McCarran of the Cape Cod Times staff. Has a dateline of Centerville. In the kitchen at St. George Greek Orthodox Church, Paula Giannakopoulos presided on a recent morning over the making of hundreds of koularakia. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. I'll spell it for you. Koularakia. Koularakia. A type of butter cookie that is a traditional treat in Greek households. With 4 pounds of butter, 16 eggs, 8 pounds of flour, and 2 pounds of sugar going into each batch, it was a huge task. But Giannakopoulos, known to everyone as Presbytera, a title given to her as the wife of retired priest Peter Giannakopoulos, was undaunted in that task. In the Greek community, food is a focal point of family and community life. It's a means of passing down cultural traditions, showing care and love, welcoming in newcomers, and bringing people together. And there is no quantity of food too challenging to take on because there are always plenty of willing helpers. That's exactly what Giannakopoulos had as she oversaw the cookie making ahead of the church's annual Greek Food Festival, which is coming up July 12th and 13th. Working from a recipe taped onto a shelf on the pristine food prep station, she weighed out flour and added it to the bowl of a large stand mixer, watching patiently as a batch of pale yellow buttery dough formed. Meanwhile, in the adjoining community room, several elders sat at round tables with big bowls of previously mixed dough, scooping out small handfuls of it and rolling it into logs that were then twisted and deposited into and onto cookie sheets. It wasn't long before the kitchen and the community room were filled with the aroma of baking koularakia. Sophia Sarahanis said the group effort is typical. One big extended family. They come together, they work together. So handing down cultural traditions. In many ways, the food festival they are preparing for celebrates the cornerstone of the Greek-American community. That is, family, faith, and good food. And the food preparation itself, whether at home or in the church's big kitchen, is a way that cultural traditions and recipes get handed down, as well as a way to celebrate the diversity within the community coming from different regions of the home country of Greece. This recipe for koularakia came from one of the grandmothers, and we still use it today, said Giannakopoulos. When I make it, the recipe, that is, and you add your own flavor. I usually use smaller amounts, and I really like to add a little orange flour and flavor just to kind of make it my own. So learning from the elders. Like many others, Giannakopoulos learned her way around the kitchen from elders. That's often how it is in Greek household recipes and methods, much of the time never written down before. Those recipes are learned from previous generations, and sometimes there are more slight differences and innovations as people make it more to their own preferences. Between my mother and my father and the elderly ladies, I watched what they are doing. Giannakopoulos said, and I've added my own twist, as well as using their thoughts, ideas, and recipes as my base. Food traditions brought from Greece. Like others in the Greek community, Nick Kofas found a living with food. For years, he operated the Hidden Kitchen in Boston's South End after having come to the U.S. from Greece as a teen in 1969. It's there that he developed his passion for cooking. I came from a village outside Sparta. My friends and parents were farmers, and they were mostly gone from the house. When we got home from school, we had to prepare our own meals. I learned from my dad and my mother, said Kofas, who was among those helping with the recent koulourekia making. You learn from everyone. That's just the way it is. Eleni Siamos, also helping with the koulourekia, said in the remote mountain village of Krapsi, that's Krapsi, where she grew up, families had to be self-sufficient. We had chickens for eggs, a cow for our own milk, for our own feta as well. Every few months, my parents would go into town and bring back things like oranges, said Siamos, whose family owns Tony's Pizza in South Yarmouth. Vasiliki Pantopoulos had a similar early life experience growing up in the village of Mesolongi on the Gulf of Patras. A lot of things were grown, he said. We had a horse and one cow. Every day fresh milk, she said. My mother makes cheese and pita. My mother always did it without recipes. For Anastasia Kazarian, whose grandparents came from Lefkada and the island of Forni, preparing and sharing food has always been an expression of love and a way for families and friends to bond. Every Sunday, we would go to one of my yiyas, that's Y-I-A-Y-I-A-S, house for dinner, she said. My mother's mother was the best baker. Everything was in her head, no recipes. My mother actually wrote recipes down from her, my grandmother, otherwise I would not have them. Ask them for help, and they all come in. Tony Zambas, whose job it is to make sure the food festival helpers have everything they need to cook, is thankful for the dedicated help of the elders and their collective memories of recipes. You ask them for help, and they all come in, he said. A businessman who's been associated with food markets in Chatham, Dennis, and Orleans, as well as Cranberry Liquors in Harwichport, Zambas is very familiar with the role of food in the community. To visit a Greek house, Zambas said, is to be welcomed like a family member and fed like one as well. You cannot go into a house without receiving a serving of something, he said. So sharing with the rest of the community, sharing that culture with others outside the Greek community is what Manos Voukakis, chairman of the Food Festival, aims to do with the event. His focus is on making a truer reflection of what the Greek families here get to enjoy all the time. For the food festival, he said, they are making a lot more in-house now than for past festivals, like his favorite pastitio, often referred to as Greek lasagna. It's a moussaka and baked eggplant casserole. It's not just about food, it's about getting together, said Voukakis. It's a cultural way of discussing and exchanging ideas and bringing joy to others. That's how people should really be. Enjoy your time together and simply be happy. So how do you attend the St. George Greek Food Fest if you're interested? Well, the food festival takes place, as we said earlier, July 12 and 13 at the St. George Greek Orthodox Church, 1130 Falmouth Road in Centerville. That's on Route 28. Hours are 4 to 10 p.m. on July 12th, noon to 11 p.m. on July 13th, and parking there at the church is free. So there you have it, some thoughts on the Greek Food Festival coming up this weekend. All right, friends, let's move on. Also here on page one, a rather sad article about an automobile crash. It says, as a headline, Woman Dead, Driver Suffers Critical Injuries in Crash. It's by Cody Shepard of the USA Today Network, and The Times has a dateline of Raynham. Here's the article. A 74-year-old Mashpee woman who was the passenger inside a sedan that crashed into the woods on Interstate 495 in Raynham on Saturday afternoon has died as a result of her injuries, said the police. State police responded to a report of a crash on Interstate 495 south prior to Route 24 north about 3:18 p.m. on Saturday. State police received a report shortly after 3 p.m. that the vehicle veered from the middle lane into the thickly wooded median and struck several trees. State Police spokesperson Tom McGurk said in an email Sunday morning. The vehicle rolled over, began emitting smoke, and came to rest on its roof with several large trees on top of it. The driver of the 2018 Chevy Malibu, a man in his 70s, was taken to Boston Medical Center with critical injuries, McGurk said. The passenger, 74-year-old Lana Testa, that's T-E-S-T-A, died as a result of her injuries, McGurk said. Our team interacted with Bridgewater A5 with a trauma patient, the union said. The accident occurred on Route 495. The team boarded the ambulance and transfused the blood on the way to the Boston hospital. The victim's condition was not immediately known Sunday. Canton's new EMS truck was used for the first time earlier in the week for a 35-year-old who was seriously injured in a crash as well. The victim's blood pressure had dropped. He was showing signs of going into shock and had internal bleeding, so firefighters performed a blood transfusion on the way to the hospital. Canton is the first fire department in Massachusetts to have the ability to give whole blood transfusions on the way to a hospital. The program was designed with the help of a trauma surgeon from Boston Medical Center. The Massachusetts State Police Collision Analysis and Reconstruction Section and Crime Scene Services Section responded to the Raynham crash scene on Saturday, as well as state police detectives assigned to the Plymouth County District Attorney's Office. The right travel lane was closed for about 4 hours during the on-scene investigation, and the crash remains under investigation. Again, that was a reference to 74-year-old Lana Testa, T-E-S-T-A, who died as a result of that crash. Here's another article from page 1. It said, "Bird Nazis, spray-painted signs in seashore are under investigation." This is by Callie Walker of the Cape Cod Times Network. Here's the article, friends. The writing of, quote, "bird Nazis," end quote, in purple spray paint on signs in the Cape Cod National Seashore and other acts of vandalism of federal property in Provincetown is under investigation by park rangers. The incidents started on June 15th and are continuing at Herring Cove Beach and the Wood End Marsh Trail Bike Rack. Lindsay French, a visual information specialist at Cape Cod National Seashore, said in a statement the vandalism was found on multiple signs and vehicles. Mary Jo Avalar, the Provincetown representative of the Cape Cod National Seashore Advisory Commission, said Friday that bird Nazis, those words were likely in reference to shorebirds, such as piping plovers that make the seashore beaches their home. Piping plovers are designated as a state and federal threatened species, according to the Massachusetts state website. There are 4 other species of threatened or endangered shorebirds in Massachusetts, all of which are protected under state law. There have been off-road beach driving and walking trail closures recently due to protections for the nesting shorebirds. As of Friday, beach access was closed at the end of Snail Road, and the entire off-road recreational vehicle corridor was closed as well, according to the National Park Service website. Last year, there was a total closure of the vehicle corridor from June 5 to August 8, according to the Seashore's annual report. Last year, the Seashore sold 3,364 off-road vehicle permits. As of Friday, several seashore beaches had seasonal or temporary pet closures to protect shorebirds as well. It's our job to protect it. Well, you just had to put up with the fact that this wildlife is endangered, and it's our job to protect it, Avalar said. And it's part of the seashore's mandate to protect it. And and if people are going to act like that, I hope they get caught and go to jail. Avalar said she hasn't seen any similar incidents in the past. There's always like an incident every once in a while, but nothing. I've never heard of anything like this, she said. And I think it's horrible. Repairing these sites, if possible, is costly and time-consuming. Defacing public land degrades the experience of other visitors, French said. French also said visitors are reminded to respect any closures and park signs. All right, there you have it. The reference to bird Nazis spray painted on signs and vehicles along the national seashore in the East Ham area. All right, one more article here on page 1, and I had mentioned when we did the weather about the storm Beryl slamming into Texas, and this next article references that. And here is that article. It says Beryl, that's B-E-R-Y-L, the storm name, slams into Texas and at least 2 are dead. 2 million without power, flights canceled amid flooding and high winds. This article is from the USA Today network, and here it is. Beryl made landfall along the Texas coast as a Category 1 hurricane early Monday, unleashing a barrage of severe weather as it moved inland before weakening into a tropical storm, still, however, capable of widespread damage and developing tornadoes. Through the morning, much of eastern Texas was inundated with light-threatening storm surge, torrential rain, and powerful wind gusts up to 97 miles per hour. The dangerous conditions prompted rescue operations, disrupted hundreds of flights, left more than 2 million people without power, and caused at least 2 deaths. Beryl had sustained winds of over 80 miles per hour as it made landfall around 4 in the morning near Matagorda, a coastal community between Corpus Christi and Galveston, according to the National Hurricane Center. More than 5 hours later, it weakened into a tropical storm, continuing to push inland with sustained winds at 70 miles per hour, which uprooted trees and knocked over power poles. In a suburban part of Harris County, just northeast of Houston, a man was killed when a tree fell on his home and trapped him under debris, according to Sheriff Ed Gonzalez. In northern Harris County, a tree fell onto a house and killed a 74-year-old woman, Gonzalez said on the social media post. Tornado warnings activated when Beryl made landfall remained in place across eastern Texas as weather officials warned of possible twisters across Texas, Louisiana, and Arkansas. Across eastern Texas, heavy rain and the ensuing flooding triggered water rescue efforts as people became trapped in their homes and vehicles. In Houston, the National Weather Service office said 3 to 6 inches of rain had caused flash flooding across parts of the city. Another 2 to 4 inches of rain was expected, the Weather Service said, and it urged drivers to avoid flooded roads. The storm prompted closures or vessel traffic restrictions at multiple ports and cities from Houston to Corpus Christi. At Houston's George Bush Intercontinental Airport, nearly 1,000 arriving and departing flights were canceled, according to FlightAware. William P. Hobby Airport, a smaller airport in Houston, had more than 225 cancellations, again according to FlightAware. Houston is a major hub for United Airlines, which is suffering the worst of the operational impacts from the storm so far. About 14% of United's flights, around 400 departures, were canceled early Monday. Meanwhile, Beryl knocked out power for more than 2.1 million customers in eastern Texas, according to the power company CenterPoint Energy. On its website, CenterPoint Energy said the service was disrupted by 4,810 active outages in their system. According to PowerOutage.us, an outage tracker, more than 2.5 million homes and businesses across Texas were eventually without power. Last week, Beryl carved a path of destruction across the Caribbean, leaving at least 11 people dead and destroying or severely damaging infrastructure on several islands. Beryl, which at one point strengthened into the earliest Category 5 hurricane on record, last made landfall on Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula Friday morning. The storm then weakened into a tropical storm and then again strengthened back into a hurricane before making landfall in Texas as it crossed warm waters. Beryl is expected to weaken into a tropical depression as it moves further inland. It is projected to continue heading north across the Mississippi Valley and then the Ohio Valley, where it's expected to dissipate on Tuesday and Wednesday. As Beryl moves north toward parts of the Midwest, forecasters are also watching 3 tropical waves in the Atlantic Basin. An eastern Atlantic tropical wave is moving westward at 11 to 17 miles per hour. A central Atlantic tropical wave is moving westward at 11 to 17 miles per hour. And yet a third tropical wave extends over the Yucatan Peninsula, moving westward at 11 miles per hour. All right, friends, there you have it, a brief reference and update on the storm Beryl as it banged into southeast Texas, right around the Houston area. Moving on to page 2, there are a couple articles of local interest, and so I'll share them with you now. This first one says, Mashpee Police looking for information about an early morning stabbing. The Mashpee police are seeking information about an early morning stabbing that happened at Adequan Park, according to a press release. Just after 2 in the morning on Saturday, Mashpee police were notified of a man with an alleged stab wound to his back as he was being brought to Falmouth Hospital as a passenger in a private car. Mashpee and Falmouth police officers were able to find the victim on Route 28 around the Mashpee-Falmouth town line, where the driver was instructed to pull over and then wait for an ambulance. After providing first aid, police determined the 24-year-old New Bedford man had been stabbed at Adequan Park in Mashpee during an altercation. He was brought to Falmouth Hospital by the Mashpee Fire and Rescue Department with what appeared to be non-threatening injuries. The crime scene was ultimately secured, and an open and active investigation was initiated and is now ongoing. Mashpee police were assisted at the scene by the Falmouth Police Department and the Barnstable County Sheriff's Office Bureau of Criminal Investigations Unit. If anyone has information about this incident, they are encouraged to call the Mashpee Police Department Detective Bureau at 508-539-1480. Again, if you have information about this incident at Adequan Park, please call the Mashpee Police Department Detective Bureau at 508-539-1480. Well, all of us who live on Cape Cod are obviously concerned about the quality of water, fresh water and salt water in our home grounds here. And this next article gives an update on Cape Ponds, and it's entitled Cape Pond Update, 3 Ponds with Cyanobacteria Concerns. It's by Eric Williams of the Cape Cod Times Network. Here it is. Excuse me. Oh, excuse me, friends. If you're a fan of swimming in Cape Cod ponds or your pet has been known to take a dip, it's a good idea to keep abreast of the up-to-date latest cyanobacteria monitoring information. The Association to Preserve Cape Cod, with the acronym APCC, along with volunteers, pond associations, towns, and the state, is monitoring more than 100 freshwater ponds for concentrations of cyanobacteria, which is blue-green algae and various toxins produced by that bacteria. These toxins can affect the liver and nerves and cause sickness in both people and animals. When the levels of cyanobacteria rise, association staff members alert towns. The towns may then post a prohibition on swimming and other activities in the pond until the algae population drops. So what causes the blue-green algae blooms? Well, the blooms usually occur in the late summer, fueled by warm water or high levels of nutrients from fertilizers, runoff, or wastewater seeping through the soil. But Cape ponds remain warm into the fall, and algae blooms have occurred as late as December, according to various officials. So here are the Cape Cod ponds under alert or watch for cyanobacteria. In Barnstable, Lovell's Pond in Barnstable is a pond of concern after a sample was taken on July the 1st. According to the APC, again, the Association to Preserve Cape Cod, the potential concern status means at the time and place of sampling, results indicate either moderate risk for potential exposure to cyanobacterial toxins approaching but below state standards, or a likelihood for increasing cyanobacteria risk over the next days or weeks. In Falmouth, Nyes, that's N-Y-E-S, Nyes Pond in Falmouth, is a pond of concern after a sample was taken on July 2nd. Observed scum was confirmed to be cyanobacteria. According to the APCC, the potential concern status means at the time and place of the sampling, there is a moderate risk for potential to cyanobacteria toxins. In Harwich, Buck's Pond in Harwich is a pond of concern after a sample was taken on July 2nd. Observed scum was determined to be cyanobacteria. So the same concerns and warnings exist as was previously stated. So a note, if you notice pond water is scummy or discolored or may have a strong odor, the association advises the public to avoid contact with the water. If you see what might be a suspicious cyanobacteria bloom, notify your local health department and send a photo to cyano, that's C-Y-A-N-O, at apcc.org, noting in your message the location, date, and time of the picture you took. All right, friends, we'll continue to monitor that as the days and weeks go by, and hopefully we won't have a whole lot of the cyanobacteria issues in the Cape Cod ponds. Moving on to page 3, the Cape and Islands page, there's a couple articles of local interest that I'll share with you. The first being this one, Falmouth house hit in car crash for the second time in 3 years. This is by Zane Razak of the Cape Cod Times Network, and here is the article. An SUV crashed through the front of a single-family Cape-style home at 780 East Falmouth Highway in East Falmouth around 2:30 in the morning on Sunday, according to authorities. When first responders arrived, they found a mid-sized SUV in the kitchen of the house. With full intrusion into the structure, there was significant damage to the vehicle and the home, including an active water leak, electrical hazards, and structural compromise, reads a release from the Falmouth Fire and Rescue Department. That same house was also struck by a car 2 years ago on August 1st in the year 2021. In that incident, the driver, a man in his 20s, died. There did not appear to be structural damage to the house as a result of that 2021 crash, according to a fire official at that time. The driver of the SUV was able to get out of the car Sunday morning before rescuers arrived. The driver was brought to Falmouth Hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. On Monday, Falmouth police said a 21-year-old driver from Falmouth faces charges of operating under the influence of liquor, negligent operation of a motor vehicle, stop sign violation, speeding, unlicensed operation of a motor vehicle, and leaving the scene of property damage. The driver will be issued a summons to appear in Falmouth District Court, according to the police. So, what happened to the people inside the house? Well, everyone inside the house was evacuated with household pets as well, and no injuries did occur. However, electricity, natural gas, and water were secured and turned off according to the Falmouth Fire and Rescue Department. Crews shored up the damaged structure before the car could be removed from the house by Costas Auto Body at 5:38 a.m. on Sunday, said fire officials. The house is now unlivable, and town inspectional services are working with the owners. The Falmouth police will continue to investigate the crash. The home sits opposite the T intersection where Central Avenue meets the highway. Oh, you got to feel bad for those folks. The second time their house was intruded by a car in 3 years. Sounds like a real mess. All right, let's move on. Well, friends, we're a little past the halfway point, and it's typically here that we take a look at the obituaries. And today it seems as if we only have one, and it's really quite brief, so I'll give that to you now. This one is of Robert Frederick Bob Pistel, Jr., that's spelled Pistel, has a dateline of West Barnstable. Robert Frederick Pistel Jr., affectionately known as Bob of West Barnstable, passed away on July 3rd at the age of 83. Bob leaves behind his wife of 58 years, Nancy, his children, Christopher and Rebecca Wood, along with her husband, Chuck. His legacy continues through his 3 cherished grandchildren, Cooper, Michaela, and Addison. He was predeceased by his parents, Robert and Lydia Pistel, and his brother, John. Bob also leaves behind various cousins and other family members. A celebration of life will be held at a later date. There will be a private family burial. In lieu of flowers, please send donations to Spalding Rehab Center of Cape Cod. All right, that's the obituary, brief as it may be, of Robert Pistel, Pistel Jr. of West Barnstable. Now back to the Cape and Islands page. Here's another article entitled Man Faced Assault Charge After Domestic Incident in West Barnstable. This is by Zane Razak of the Cape Cod Times Network. A man was taken into custody and faced a charge of assault Sunday afternoon after police responded to a domestic incident on Great Marsh Road in West Barnstable, said Cape and Islands District Attorney Robert Galabos by phone. The incident occurred over about 5 hours. I want to recognize the tremendous work by the Barnstable Police Department. They were patient, purposeful, and professional throughout, and because of their efforts, after about 5 hours or so, this has ended peacefully, and we are most grateful, said the district attorney. He also said that he believed the man is getting medical treatment. Police, fire, and K-9 units responded to the incident. Sounds like it could have been worse, but thanks to the efforts of the police in Barnstable, it resolved as well as could be expected, or maybe better than expected. Another brief but interesting article here on the Cape and Islands page is entitled Unemployment Claims in the State Declined Last Week. Initial filings for unemployment benefits in Massachusetts dropped last week compared with the week prior, so said the U.S. Department of Labor on Thursday. New jobless claims, a proxy for layoffs, fell to 8,995 in the week ending June 28, down from 9,011 the week before. U.S. unemployment claims rose to 238,000 last week, up 4,000 claims from the 234,000 the week prior. North Dakota saw the largest percentage increase in weekly claims, with claims jumping by 83%. Vermont, meanwhile, saw the largest percentage drop in new claims, with claims dropping by 57%. In national news, a lot of questions about whether President Biden is fit for office, physically and mentally as the days go on. And this article represents a reference to that. It says Biden hosts high-stake NATO summit, faltering leader faces big test in three-day event. It's by the USA Today Network. Washington is the dateline for this article, and here it is. President Joe Biden faces a pivotal moment this week as he hosts the leaders of more than 31 nations in Washington, D.C. with a new mission. That is, to command the world stage and to stabilize a re-election campaign which is now in crisis. Much was already riding on Biden's performance at the summit, marking the 75th anniversary of the NATO alliance. While his election opponent, former President Trump, has questioned America's role in the organization, Biden has sought to reaffirm the U.S. commitment to NATO. Yet, after Biden's dismal debate performance in late June, he must now also allay the fears of worried Democrats openly discussing whether he should remain their party's presidential nominee. Biden is under immense pressure to calm his critics by demonstrating competence and coherence as he welcomes NATO allies and partners to Washington for the three-day summit, which starts Tuesday. In previous incidents, Biden has mixed up the names of foreign leaders. More recently, he struggled to complete thoughts and finish sentences during his debate against Trump, setting off panic among various Democrats. Visiting leaders will be looking for similar assurances about Biden's ability to beat Trump. European officials have expressed private concerns about how Trump would approach the alliance if he returns. Biden has alleged that at prior summits, heads of state have pulled him aside to say, "You can't let him win." The gravity of this moment for Biden is larger than anticipated, said Rachel Rizzo, a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council's Europe Center. And it just, I think, puts extra pressure on him to deliver in a way that reassures allies and reassures the American people that he is fit and ready to do the job for yet another 4 years. A growing handful of elected Democrats and party heavyweights have said Biden should step aside. The list could expand as lawmakers return to Capitol Hill this week. Biden is likely to be subjected to questions from reporters about whether he will quit the 2024 race when he holds a press conference at the conclusion of the NATO summit, his first since the disastrous confrontation with Trump at the debate. "This is absolutely critical," said Todd Belt, Political Management Program Director at George Washington University. "The job of Commander-in-Chief is to be able to work together with our allies, and the critical job of keeping the nation secure is one of the reasons we want someone who is cognitively and physically up to the job." So Ukraine's role in long-term goals leads us into the next paragraph. Biden will spend much of his time at the summit participating in group discussions about weighty topics, from military and financial support for Ukraine in its costly battle to defend itself against Russia, to the longer-term goals of a defensive alliance that was created after World War II, that being NATO. NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg said allies are close to agreeing on a robust package of Ukraine aid at the Washington summit. Even more powerful NATO allies are in final negotiations over language that says Ukraine's eventual admission into the military alliance is irreversible, so long as it makes a series of reforms required for membership. For the U.S. to approve Ukraine membership in NATO, the war with Russia would have to be over, and Ukraine would have to enact additional anti-corruption reforms, a U.S. official told USA Today Network. Biden's schedule includes a one-on-one meeting with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. He will also come face-to-face with new British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who took power last week after the Labour Party won a landslide election. The President and First Lady will open the summit at a commemorative event in Mellon Auditorium, where the North Atlantic Treaty establishing NATO was signed on April 4th of 1949. Biden will address NATO allies publicly Wednesday afternoon and hold a dinner that night for leaders and their spouses. His Thursday agenda includes a meeting of the NATO-Ukraine Council and an event with nearly 24 nations that have signed individual security agreements with Ukraine. He'll cap the summit off with a news conference. Typically, though, most of these meetings happen behind closed doors, said Stephen Fish, a University of California, Berkeley political scientist. That means Biden's public remarks, for the most part, can be scripted. He said, "So this isn't the kind of event where you would expect him to falter. It's not like a debate or an open-ended interview." The ongoing U.S. political crisis could draw more attention than Biden's geopolitical message, with foreign officials fielding inquiries about Biden's age and condition. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz said last month before the debate that Biden is someone who is very clear, who knows exactly what he is doing, and who is one of the most experienced politicians in the world. But Polish Foreign Minister Radoslaw Sikorski took a swipe at Biden after the debate ended, writing on X, "Marcus Aurelius was a great emperor, but he screwed up his succession," continuing, "It's important to manage one's ride into the sunset." That from the Polish Foreign Minister. You're going to see the president being a leader, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said at a briefing. International leaders know who they are dealing with and how effective he has been. Biden has used previous appearances at international events to make forceful case for American democracy, a key theme of his re-election campaign. Without explicitly mentioning Trump, he said last month that World War II veterans were summoning Americans to stand up to aggression abroad and at home, according to a White House transcript of his remarks. This will be a good chance for him possibly to recover some of the authority that he has at home, or that he had more at home because of the forum in which he really shines, Fish said. But he added, "I don't think there's going to be a lot of opportunities at the summit for him to dig himself out of the hole that he seems to have fallen into recently." Okay, that's the end of that article about Biden hosting a NATO summit beginning this week in Washington, D.C. As you've heard for a long time on the news and from other sources, the heat and climate change is really a big deal, and the heat this summer has really skyrocketed. This next article says this year could be the world's hottest, and June breaks a record. It's from the Reuters news agency, Dateline Brussels. Last month was the hottest June on record, the European Union's Climate Change Monitoring Service said on Monday, continuing the streak of exceptional temperatures that some scientists said puts the year 2024 on track to be the world's hottest recorded year. Every month since June of 2023, 13 months in a row, has ranked as the planet's hottest since records began, compared with the corresponding month in previous years, the European Union's Copernicus Climate Change Service said in a monthly bulletin. The latest data suggests 2024 could outrank 2023 as the hottest year since records began accumulating after human-caused climate change and the El Niño natural weather phenomenon both pushed temperatures to record highs in the year so far, so said some scientists. I now estimate that there is an approximately 95% chance that 2024 beats 2023 to be the warmest year since global surface temperature records began in the mid-1800s, said Zeke Housefather, a research scientist at U.S. nonprofit Berkeley Earth. The changed climate has already unleashed disastrous consequences around the world in 2024. More than 1,000 people died in fierce heat during the Hajj pilgrimage last month. Heat deaths were recorded in New Delhi, which endured an unprecedentedly long heat wave, and among tourists in Greece. Frederic Otto, a climate scientist at Imperial College London's Grantham Institute, said there was a high chance 2024 would rank as the hottest year on record. El Nino is a naturally occurring phenomenon that will always come and go. We can't stop El Nino, but we can stop burning oil, gas, and coal, she said. The natural El Nino phenomenon, which warms the surface waters in the eastern Pacific Ocean, tends to raise global temperatures averages. That effect subsided in recent months, with the world now in neutral conditions before cooler La Nina conditions are expected to form later this year. All right, there you have it. We may be in the hottest year ever recorded here in 2024. All right, let's take a look at the lighter side of the news today. Ask Carolyn. That's the column we're going to look at, where writers from out there in newspaper land write into Carolyn seeking her advice on their particular dilemmas or situations. This first one is entitled, Mom Sees Different Parenting Styles as Critiques of Her Choices. Here's the letter to Carolyn. Hi, Carolyn. My mom tends to take every parenting decision I make as a critique of her parenting. Unless I do it exactly the same way she did it, whatever the case may be, as she did it in the 80s and 90s. This is true even though I have repeatedly reminded her of all the ways in which my childhood differs, in which my kids' childhoods differ from mine. Different generation, different health concerns, different culture, different human beings. It results in her feelings being hurt constantly by things she should not be taking personally. Any suggestions for me? Signed, Parent. Here's Carolyn's response. Dear Parent, ignore her actings out thoroughly, consistently, without explanation or reminder, and with a verging on absurd, cheery disregard for the sideshow of her woundedness. Do your thing your way and smile and carry on without explaining or defending yourself. She can either wallow or get over it. Her choice. But you're just dandy with it all and ready to welcome her warmly when the get over it memo finally reaches her brain. And because you're a nice person who clearly wants your mom in your life, and because not all parental information expires on a 5-year circle, look for opportunities to welcome her expertise. Every genuine contribution will dampen her urges to compete with you, which can move you both closer to the over-it place, if that's where you both want to be. If instead she reads every inch as a mile, then hold cheerfully firm at the inch marker. Here's another one. Letter to Carolyn. Dear Carolyn, my partner and I have been together for 7 years, living together for 3. We aren't married yet, but probably will be soon. He just got a great job offer and wants to know what I think. There are a lot of good reasons not to take it, including that he would have to leave a job he loves, take on much more rigorous work-life balance, and need some additional education in his field. But he would be making almost double the money he's earning now, which would give us a lot of options, especially if we have kids someday. I feel so much pressure surrounding everything I say about this decision. Telling him I want him to take the job seems totally self-focused. I don't want to seem like a gold digger who just wants him to make more money at whatever the cost it is to his emotional health. Also, we're not married yet, and there's always a chance either of us decides we don't want to be. For the record, our finances are separate for now, and I earn slightly more in a year. Signed, Pressured. Here's her response. Dear Pressured, listen to him carefully and repeat it back to him. I hear you're making a lot of arguments for or against the choice. Am I hearing that right? I hear you talking yourself into or out of the choice. Fair? Or facilitate without giving opinions. Keep the pro-con list, for example, or stick to asking him pointed questions. When he wants hard opinions, I don't want to influence your decision, even by accident, and get my self-interest involved, you could say. Or if he wants your self-interest, then he can ask for it. Or offer radical transparency, like, I don't want to seem like a gold digger who just wants you to make more money at whatever cost to your emotional health, but eventually let it be his decision. All right, couple letters there to Ask Carolyn and her responses. Let's move on. Here's an article that could affect us all. It says, heat hurricanes could roil fuel prices, from the Reuters News Network with a dateline of New York. Here it is. A double whammy of record heat and hurricanes should test U.S. refiners' resilience in coming weeks, raising the risk of extremely volatile fuel prices in the middle of the peak travel season, so said various analysts. The Atlantic hurricane season, which runs from June through November, is an annual threat for U.S. refineries. Half of the country's over 18 million barrel per day refining capacity is located along the Gulf Coast, highly susceptible to tropical storms. The U.S. is the largest fuel market in the world. Refiners this year may have to brace for more storms than usual. Government forecasters expect up to 7 major hurricanes in coming months, double the average annual of 3 major Atlantic hurricanes with wind speeds over 111 miles per hour. Citgo Petroleum Corporation was cutting output at its 165,000 barrel per day Corpus Christi refinery on Saturday, and plans to run the facility at minimum during the tropical storm Beryl's passage over the Texas coast, so said their sources. The largest ports in Texas also closed operations and vessel traffic in preparation for Beryl, which strengthened back to hurricane before hitting the area early Monday. The intensity and timing of Beryl, which at one point became the earliest Category 5 hurricane on record, signals an active and disruptive season ahead, said Neil Crosby, crude oil market management analyst at Sparta Commodities. Hurricanes remain the biggest wild card for gasoline prices, said Gas Buddy analyst Patrick DeHaan. No better reminder of that than Beryl, he said. Evacuation orders ahead of storms can lift stockpiling and boost fuel demand, causing prices for gasoline, diesel, and other refined products to move even higher, DeHaan said. If a major storm hits the Gulf Coast's refining system, it could remove as much as 1 million barrels a day of fuel supply and lead to extended outages or even permanent closures, according to the U.S. Energy Information Administration. Hurricanes heading for the Gulf Coast could also knock out a similar amount of crude supply, with the offshore Gulf of Mexico region housing around 14% of the U.S. crude oil output. In the year 2021, U.S. oil and gas companies suspended more than 1.7 million barrels oil output in the aftermath of Hurricane Ida. Outages of around 1.5 million barrels per day of crude production and refining capacity can cause gasoline prices to jump by 25 to 35 cents per gallon. Warmer temperatures. Well, in addition to hurricanes, refineries this year must contend with more problems related to scorching heat around the country. The latest U.S. monthly temperature outlook foresees average temperatures in large part in the U.S. in July, typically the hottest month. Excessive temperatures have supersized effects on commodity supply chains, including oil and fuel, said J.P. Morgan analyst last month. Most refineries are designed to operate between 32 and 95 degrees Fahrenheit. Triple-digit temperatures could lead to equipment malfunctions and reduction in refining capacity. Extreme heat last year led to a 500,000 barrel per day reduction in Gulf Coast refined products output. Similar effects are being felt this year. Unit upsets reported by Phillips 66 at its Wood River refinery in Illinois last month were likely due to heat waves, according to CLOSA and other industry experts. So the heat effect throughout the country, and especially in the Gulf Coast region, can have effects that we wouldn't imagine until reading articles like this, and that can mean increases in our prices at the pump and for heating oil as well, along with natural gas. Not a good sign. Okay, friends, that pretty much does it for today. We've come to the conclusion of today's broadcast of the July 9th, Tuesday edition of the Cape Cod Times. Hopefully you've enjoyed being updated on some of these articles. So until next Tuesday, when I have the privilege and the pleasure of reading for you again, I am Doug Fagan, your volunteer reader, signing off for today, wishing you a great week. Hopefully you'll be able to keep cool, stay healthy, and stay positive. We'll speak to you again next Tuesday. So long for now.